Hello and good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world. I'm the host of the Bald Book Geek, William James, and let's give a really honest review of The Last of Us. Now, this has taken a long time to write and get right, so we'll see what happens. And I want to give a shout out to this book, and this is not sponsored, by the way. I want to give a shout out to this fantastic horror book, A Hot Dose of Hell. This scary, on your edge, brilliantly written horror. Links to this are in the description below. This is not sponsored, I'm just shouting out a great writer, and thank you so much for sending me this book. Absolutely fantastic. On the edge of your seat, brilliant horror that will keep you reading and keep you engaged in this really brilliant story. So, that's A Hot Dose of Hell. The Last of Us television show has been somewhat decisively received. I have a lot of positives. I'm actually really enjoying it. I've watched up to episode 3 at this point. So let's talk about it. I think the actors are fantastic. I really think they're pulling their weight in this show. It doesn't feel like they're just coasting, where a lot of actors do. Really enjoyable. Just really well done overall. Like, the performances are definitely worthy of some awards here. And I actually really am liking them. I think they get the characters from the game very right. I also think the feel, the atmosphere, the look of this show, they get everything right in that sense. Like, I'm really surprised by it, and I really enjoyed that. It keeps this dark, creepy, horror-y atmosphere that is not scared to make you jump out of your skin sometimes, and it doesn't steer away from darker subject matter, which was my big concern given what the creators of the show had said. I also am absolutely think this is a spot-on presentation of The Last of Us, and I think they've done, like I said, a fantastic job. Acting, performances, I think the writing is very good. It doesn't feel clumsy. And it really does capture that kind of desolate atmosphere of The Last of Us so well. I'm actually really surprised and genuinely loving it. My criticism is that some of the characterization is coming from The Last of Us 2, and that is a little bit of a divisive game amongst Last of Us fans. And I also will criticize every now and then it does feel like they skipped a step. There is some pacing issues throughout the show, but actually, so far so good. The opening episode, I think, really did capture that feeling and mood and that kind of everything going to hell around you and your the characters and all of that. I wish the opening of the show was more like the opening of the game. I think going to the old lady's house was a good idea. They tried to give some characterization to the daughter, which I think was a good idea overall, but I do feel like that shorter, sharper opening of the game set the tone a little bit more. That's a nitpick. I think they did a great job with this, and I'm not saying one is better than the other. I just preferred how the game handled the opening rather than the series, but they're both good. I think having some of the more background characters a little bit more fleshed out was a good idea, and I think just overall, it really did set the mood. The scene where his daughter is killed is heartbreaking, and it really does pack an emotional punch. Like, the guy they've got playing him really is pulling his weight here, and I love that. When we cut to the kind of after the end of the world, it's been a few years, it really does set that mood. Like, you're watching it and the like I said, characterization is on point and the mood is set, the tone is set. This is bleak and it's desolate, and I like that. Where on the other side of it, my big criticism is I feel like sometimes they've fleshed out characters that don't need to be as fleshed out. That's a pacing thing more than anything. They're trying to give every character a bit of motivation, and sometimes that just doesn't work. But, pacing. I'm a pacing geek. I like a certain pace, and I do prefer more of the pace of the game. And I do feel like here and there they've softened some of the subject matter of the game. There are rumours they've changed the science behind it slightly, and I've picked up on that already in the first 3 episodes. And I felt like the game had the science behind it more down, and I feel like this is the changes, they're subtle, but they're there. Episode 2 was a bit of a Journey of the West type vibe. Heartbreaking moment, ended on heartbreak, but also the bonding between Joe. And it was a nice episode. Episode 3 is the divisive one, and actually I have no problems with it. I like the fact you got to see the build-up to what happened at the end with the letter and everything. I do feel like it could have been maybe even a little bit darker. I felt like they kept it quite light in certain aspects of that, and it did feel like unnecessary filler, but a very well-written episode. So, actually, I'm genuinely liking this. I don't like a lot of the people behind it. I think the showrunner guys are idiots, but they usually are. And I think some of the changes, rumoured changes, and from the leaks, are a little bit red flag wavy. But we'll see how it goes. I'm really hoping they don't use too much of A Last of Us 2, or at least, because that was so different to The Last of Us 1 in terms of characterization, story structure, and other things. It did fall flat next to it. So far, I'm giving this a good score. And I will say it's definitely stronger than the opening few episodes of The Walking Dead, for example, which was probably its nearest comparison. Although, what I will say is they're tonally very different shows. There's a cartooniness to The Walking Dead, where this is slightly more grounded in the reality of what's happening, and it's more of a character study. So, first 3 episodes in, I'm actually impressed. There are changes that I didn't like, but I get why they're there, and I do wish the opening was a little bit faster and a bit more punch like the game has. So, tell me what you think in the comments below, and I will talk to you guys later.